We didn't get a deal for probably like 4 or 5 months, and we were attacking it hard.
Yeah.
But throughout that process, we just believed so strongly in what we were doing for whatever
Right.
reason. It's like we never questioned the business model ever, even though we weren't having early success. We got our first deal. It was actually in Tennessee. We bought it for like $5,000 and sold it for $15,000 in a day. And it had, I think, 5,000 plus tires on it. So that scared us away. There's like a big tire mound built with dirt over it. It's just been sitting there for 20 years. We're under contract for $15,000. I was like, listen, you got 5,000 tires on your land. I can't buy this for more than $5,000. Got a $5,000 contract. And we sold it the next day for like $15,000. And that's when we're like, all right, let's just keep doing this over and over and over again.
Podcast. I've got with me here another land founder of many companies, very ambitious, lots of irons in the fire here. I've got Daniel Apke of Landinvesting Online and the Land Portal. How you doing, Daniel?
Yeah. Good, man. Thanks for having me. Excited to get into it today.
Yeah. Hey, man, I want to cover a lot of different things, I think, today, but let's kind of start with you kind of introducing yourself to people that might not be familiar with you and the companies you're involved in.
Yeah, I started out, believe it or not, in the e-commerce world, and I had different e-commerce companies. That kind of got me introduced to just online marketing and things like that early on. This was like right after college at 22. I started e-commerce businesses, and my whole goal with that business was to get out of my job and be able to work from wherever, right?
At 22, you already wanted to get out of a job, huh?
Yeah, no, I started and wanted to I always had like kind of entrepreneurship aspirations. And I grew up, my dad owned a carpet cleaning business. So I saw his hard work. I saw how the ups and downs worked, but I also loved the flexibility that he had in terms of just running his own day and stuff. So I think subconsciously that was instilled in me a little bit, but I started my job pretty much immediately, started looking for other ways to make money and get out of a job. And I ended up staying in a job for several years, maybe 3-4 years. But while I was in that job, I had a side hustle, which was the e-commerce. I eventually built that up and was able to sell it later on to an investor out in California. But I had two mentors, Joe and Mike Bruska at the time, who were showing me all the e-commerce and helping me run and start those businesses and really scale them. Joe and Mike kind of introduced me to land and some different ways you can make money in the land industry.
Yeah.
And they were huge on, hey, there's so much land out there. It's pretty easy to acquire. And a lot of these landowners want to sell below market value. And they were kind of running with it in different ways that we do today. But they opened my eyes to it. And that was probably like a year before I actually started land.
Now, in e-com, what were you selling? I mean, because e-com, right, is pretty broad term. What were you focusing on?
Electric bikes was the big one that I ended up selling. It was an electric bike company.
Okay. And when you take that, because I found we have a couple of coaching clients who have e-com background, and most of them have really good transferable skills. Like they just get this and do really well, right?
Yeah.
So what do you feel like was transferable when you started looking at land? Are you looking at it from like a quantity or volume and situation where you're not holding inventory, you don't have to physically hold it, it's like drop shipping almost, right?
Yeah.
With how we run things. What did you see with land that made you feel like, all right, I want to pivot or at least parlay into land from e-com?
The profitability was the biggest thing. Like in e-com, you're technically a distributor, right? So you're buying and reselling products with, you have different suppliers and agreements on that. Yeah. And you're like 30% margin is a great margin. And then after ads and after everything else and all your other costs and employees, you're down, like you're lucky to break 10% in distribution e-commerce. So the first thing I saw was the profitability. The second thing I saw was the competition. I'm like, okay, if we can make it in electric bikes and e-commerce like this, I didn't see much competition in land at the time. There's still not much compared to but it's like, if we can survive in that industry, it's like a lot of wholesalers that are wholesaling houses in Austin, Texas. Like if they can do that, you come over to land, it's like landing on the moon and there's no gravity.
And then they look at the people in land that go, man, it's getting harder. It's hard. They go, wait a minute. That's a relative term, right? I came from this. You're right. Like I came from like house wholesaling, which is completely red ocean, right? Very scalable, but at the same time, like highly competitive. They come over here and they're like, oh my gosh, you guys are 5 years behind, right? But since other people who have kind of been spoiled and been in the game a long time kind of see a shift or getting it more competitive, but they don't have that frame of reference from other industries.
Exactly. Yeah. No, we have it good in land for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. So you start out, is it just you? You start out as a kind of a one-man show, or how did you approach this? Did you have a VA or build a team right away?
With land, you're saying?
Yeah.
So I approached my brother. I remember I was driving to Southeast Ohio to stay in a cabin, and I approached him. I had a lot of, I had not a lot, but I had a decent amount of capital from my e-commerce doing well.
Yeah.
And I was starting to build capital, and I was like, I don't have time though because of all my businesses. I had a lot of businesses running at that time, and I was overwhelmed. But I was like, I really want to get into land, and I pitched my brother, and I was like, if you do a lot of the legwork up front, I'll come in later on when I sell my business and when I do all this, and but I can fund the whole thing essentially.
Yeah.
It didn't end up working like that, but that's how I pitched them. And we went in that weekend. We just started diving in, and it was around Christmas time, I think. And we just dove in full force together. I ended up pretty much going full time with him on it because we loved it and we saw the opportunity there.
Yeah.
But while I did that, I was also planning an exit at the same time of my e-commerce store. So it was like I knew that was coming to an end. So we were really launching up this land, getting ready for me to sell the store and be full in as well.
So what markets, I mean, how do you pick a market? You know, you mentioned like Ohio, right? How did you initially choose a market to focus on? That's, as we know, right? As you guys coach as well, right? Like that's always a beginner. Some of the first questions are like, how do I pick a market? Is almost the number one, leading question.
Yeah, it is. That's a hot topic always. I think we did a lot at first around where we were. Which is, we were based in Cincinnati at the time. I'm in Florida now, but we were based in Cincinnati. We did a lot around there, just a couple counties removed from Cincinnati. We didn't put too much thought, honestly, at that time into it. No one was really doing it at a high scale in the areas we were looking at that time. So there was like we thought risk because we're like, can you even flip land in Ohio in this part? Like we couldn't find anyone doing something similar and land investing in that area. Even like Tennessee, we went into Tennessee. We didn't put much thought into the actual county selection process, to be honest. We kind of just really attacked it. And we're like, let's go in our backyard. We know there's demand here. Like, let's start where we are and what we know and see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. You're right. Because that's definitely not like Ohio wouldn't be somebody's, I don't know many people that would say, yeah, Ohio is my first choice. If they were looking at comp data, is their compass to steer them somewhere. So that's awesome that, you guys found traction. Well, I think if you're in a local market, you can, if you need to drive to something, the higher value ones, it's nice, right? The cheap ones, it's not worth your time, but like the higher value, I think that it's really valuable to be able to, to be able to go take a look at the property if we're getting up into the high 5 figures or 6 figures. No, that's great. So you guys get started there. And then what changes for you? Like at some point, when does it kind of like turn like, hey, I'm liking this, I'm enjoying this, to like, all right, this is profitable to the point where we can kind of go all in on this, and you kill off the other businesses and all the other things you were doing to focus mainly on land. How long did that take?
We didn't get a deal for probably like 4 or 5 months, and we were attacking it hard. But throughout that process, we believed, like looking back, we just believed so strongly in what we were doing for whatever reason. It's like we never questioned the business model ever, even though we weren't having early success. And I think, I don't know what that was. We just really believed we could make it happen. Like I thought I was making profit before I was making profit, like in my head. That's how much we believed almost. But then like we got our first deal. It was actually in Tennessee. We bought it for like $5,000 and sold it for $15,000 in a day. And it had, I think 5,000 plus tires on it. So that scared us away. There's like a big tire mound built with dirt over it. It's just been sitting there for 20 years. We're under contract for $15,000. I was like, listen, you got 5,000 tires on your land. I can't buy this for more than 5. Got a $5,000 contract. And we sold it the next day for like 15,000. And that's when we're like, all right, let's just keep doing this over and over and over again.
That was me. Our first one where I'm like, it was actually our second one. I started out about 11 years ago, and I was doing online, like Bid for Assets website. I was buying off of county tax auctions. And our first one, we bought for 500, sold for 1,500, right? And then the next one, same thing. We bought a lot in the same subdivision for 500, and it sold for 5,000. And that's where like that for me, it was like, all right, just instantly you go like, okay, how fast can we go? How many of these can we do? Right.
Exactly.
And it just instantly you go like, all right, let's go. Right. Let's do this about 100 more times. So that 5 for 5, sell for 15. Yeah. Let's do about 30 of those a year. Right.
Yeah. And it took a long time for us to we did a lot of deals like that. 5 for 10, sell for 25. Like that was our bread and butter for a long time.
Yeah.
And then we were scaling the team and everything. We had a transaction coordinator, we had salespeople, and we really just started putting emphasis on big deals. But almost like when you first start, you don't, we didn't know if we could do big deals or not. Like
Yeah.
there's that barrier.
Yeah, I feel like you have to grow into it. Sometimes it's
You
almost
do.
like a proof of concept. I have a coaching client that, well, I started coaching him like 2021. I coached him for about 2 years, but he started out, it was really focusing on like super cheap properties, like $5,000 or less,
Yeah.
and when I'm kind of trying to like talk through this with him, I'm like, I'm happy to help you do whatever you want to focus on, but why are we only doing 5,000 or less? He's like, well, that way, if I mess up or make a mistake, I won't ever lose more than like $5,000. And I'm like, man, that's like, you're like dribbling out the clock, playing to not lose. And then somebody steals the ball and lays it up on you. Like we're
Yeah.
running out, like you're playing to not lose. So I'm kind of talking him through that. And I'm like, there's a lot of opportunity at every level. But even as I explained it, he couldn't see it. But we moved him to where like he did a deal where he made 10, I think 10 or 12,000. And then it was like, oh, okay. And then we just gradually worked his way up. He did another deal. It was almost like doubles. He went from like 12,000, I think, to like 24 or 25K on a deal. And with each one, he could see bigger deals. But we couldn't jump from like a $5,000 property to 100,000. But gradually over the course of when I was coaching him, I think we're about at the 18-month mark. He started out at $5,000 properties. We did 10, 15, 25, right? And then kind of like the peak was we did a deal where he netted 100K on a waterfront lot, Polk County, Florida, a waterfront lot, right? And it was just like, it was just so neat because over the course of a year and a half, 2 years, it was more just seeing him grow with that understanding. And, initially he didn't believe that at all. One, that it could be done. Two, that he could do it. And it took like, step by step up the staircase to get there. But I was the same way. Like for me it was kind of like, I didn't know if the opportunity was out there. And then the other thing was kind of the capital. I was just limited. I couldn't buy a $200,000 property, even if they'd give it to me for 100,000, because I didn't have access to that. Right. So I think that's the two things. It's usually like a limiting belief, mentally, or like the bank account is hamstringing you. Right.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think like that. We were the same way, kind of just exponentially went up. But once we started putting focus on it, like a year later, before we were averaging like $20,000 average acquisition cost or so.
Yeah.
And then like a year later, over 50% of our deals were over six figures acquisition. And it's just crazy how that flip can happen. Just like building that confidence up, because at first you just don't believe you can make six-figure profit from a deal.
Well, that's incredible. And I think that there is a ton of opportunity at that, like, I don't know, buy for 20, buy for 25, sell for, 45 to 60, somewhere in there, you know what I mean? Where we're kind of making 20 to 30 grand a deal. I feel like that's kind of what we built our business on after we were in the business a couple years and we started to move from making 2,500 to 3,500 bucks a property. It became 25,000 or 35,000. And that's kind of what we built the business on. And then when those six-figure opportunities came our way, which were way fewer and far between. So that's incredible for you guys to get to where that was about half of the business. So you move out, I'm guessing you move out of Ohio, or where are we focusing on properties now?
Yeah, we do a lot of, we did a ton in Georgia. Like that's, if you look at on a scatter map of everywhere, we've done a few thousand deals now, or 2,000 deals about probably. I don't have the exact number, but if you look on a scatter map, Georgia has the most dots on it by far. And we got in it when there's really no land investors at all.
It's like a sleeper state, but
Yeah, exactly. And Georgia was really, really good to us. The properties were selling fast. We were acquiring a ton. It was unbelievable. And we would just rip so much marketing to Georgia.
Yeah.
And we focused on Georgia a lot. That was like our bread and butter for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's, having been in it a while, that was like probably 4 years ago. I'd say more like 4 or 5 years ago. The Carolinas were like these quiet states. Georgia, Tennessee, Georgia, the Carolinas were like these sleeper states that nobody was looking at. Everybody's focusing on like Florida and Texas, Arizona, right? And these states were just like blue ocean. And then now, there's no secrets out. I think South Carolina was like #1 state on like the migration data, right? So that Southeast has exploded. For those not familiar, like Georgia changed some direct mail laws, right? It made it like now we've got to disclose on their outer envelope that we have a less than full market value offer. How's that affected you guys? Just making the assumption that direct mail was your channel of marketing at the time?
Yeah, no, it was. We don't market to Georgia as much as we used to, so we haven't been dealt with those new regulations and having to disclose that it's an unsolicited offer, essentially, from what I understand. But I see it also like it scares a lot of people away
Yeah.
from mailing Georgia, so I see it just as much maybe as a bigger opportunity than something to be scared of. To be honest, because I see, how many people come in and say, I don't want to mail to Georgia because of this, or I don't want to market to Georgia because of this. It's like that just means more opportunities for the others who
Yeah.
want to stay there.
That's what we do with like states like South Carolina. Some of these states are moving away from like outline double closes, right? So it runs a lot of people out. We just started buying out with seller financing instead of, you know what I mean? Instead of double closing, we just kind of pivot and go, okay, we'll just buy on payments and then immediately relist. And then states like Georgia go, all right, well, we're going to cold call everybody now. And then we're mailing the out-of-state owners, but not the in-state owners. It's ridiculous. Yeah, like the envelope says like this offer is like for real estate and the offer is for less than full market value. It's like, and it's got to be a certain font size. It's such overkill. Well, Matt, so you guys are things are cranking. And then at what point do you guys kind of launch education and start coaching and helping other people, I assume, like replicate your model of what you're doing?
Yeah, probably a couple years after, 2, 3 years after we started. And that was primarily like there wasn't a lot of people in land still at that time either. And it's really like, when I looked at what helped me completely get out of my job and live a life of what I wanted to do and get the freedom I was looking for, it's like land helped me with that the most. Even though I had the e-commerce and everything, like I wouldn't have been able to be where I was without that land foundation to transform into. So like for me, it was like, we got to get this secret out almost. I kind of felt a purpose or need to there's no reason land flipping and land investing should not be one of the pinnacle pillars of the real estate investing model in my mind.
Yeah. And that's what I felt like once we identified that there was, like you said, so much land, so much parcels everywhere. And unless we're going to go start a multi-billion-dollar fund, there's no need to think have that scarcity mindset, right? That like, I can't be in all 50 states and I can't buy everything, right? So there's more than enough for everybody.
And there's so many different niches within land too. You talk about all the ways to acquire deals. You were at tax auctions, you said. There's probate deals you can get. We do mainly our business now is a bunch of like minor subdivides. So you can buy at market value on the market, split it up a few times and still get crazy returns. So there's just so many different areas to go into in land investing. It's a broad term.
It is. And I think that's just it. A lot of times like that on-ramp is flipping single parcels, kind of that, like buy low, sell for 2x or whatever we buy for. I think that's kind of the entry point, the proof of concept. And then you're right. People find, especially if they choose to be like a full-time investor or land professional, they generally kind of choose a niche, where they like subdivide, and some people become aware of that. And that's their whole career. They're never flipping again. They're like, if I can buy one, split it up into 5, turn around,
Yeah. And you can buy them on the market sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we're going to get into land portal, but now in the land portal, you can put for sale. You want 1,000 feet of road frontage, great. Anything between 20 to 50 acres for sale with 1,000 feet of road frontage with this much wetlands. And you have a list of people who are already selling their property on the MLS you can attack, because you know it's going to make sense if you buy it and then subdivide it up, you're going to get a return on it in the end if you do your research properly.
So you guys start helping others, right? Which I'm making some assumptions based on what I learned when I started coaching other people. For me, it was like all of a sudden, wow, I'm helping other people, but I'm exposed to a lot of new markets, states that I hadn't been in. So you're learning other markets. And at what point, when you guys are coaching and teaching and educating, do you decide, okay, because this is a heavy lift, man. This is a major decision. You guys go, okay, we're going to build out a data and mapping platform and product, purpose built, based on what we know is needed as land investors and what our community needs. When did that come about?
We were looking into it for a while, and it's really just because like I was so sick of sending mail in Kentucky to 30% with a structure on it, and just bad landlocked properties, and I was really sick of just sending wasteful marketing out essentially. And I saw this constantly with people who are coming in, just like such a waste of budget, waste of time. You get the lead back. Most of the time when you get these leads back, they were bad leads. Like I did sales for our company for acquisitions, for Apke land for a long time. And I just remember getting all these calls. You get excited, they'd be willing to sell, and you'd pull it up and it'd be landlocked, or it'd have a
Yeah.
structure, or like something was just wrong with it. And you just see this over and over and over again. And I just eventually, it just was in our lap. I was like, why don't we just build out the software exactly what we're looking for? I didn't know we'd build it out as big as what it is today. I thought it was just going to be at first like a small little project. And then I fell in love with just building things like that. So we just continued to scale it. But yeah, I was just looking for a way to fill my need at the time, and the students' needs and the industry's needs. There just was nothing.
Well, you're so right in that. So that was our approach, even as we would pull, these massive lists, and sometimes even smaller lists, but the cost to market, especially if we run multiple campaigns. And then really, if we're sending mail, multiple campaigns, the cost of postage per unit, right? We had I still remember this, my wife, it's like a 4-letter word. It's a bad word. Pima County in Arizona. We sent a big campaign to Pima County, and we had so many signed offers come back, this blind offer campaign. And so many of them were in these 1 or 2 subdivisions that were landlocked. And it was just like our Pat Live bill was almost $3,000 for people calling in, right? And my wife, she's like, okay, we got to change like our process somehow. And that's where we started like having our list scrub, right? We would pay a VA row by row, map every property, look, is it, kind of our flood zone, wetlands, road access, slope, we would scrub out those. But the problem, and we did that for years, but the problem, like you identified, is that saved us on all that unnecessary marketing and postage, right? And then the calls back on those, but there was a turnaround time, a cost, right? There was a turnaround time. That was the main thing. I'd hand my list over. I have to wait a week or more.
Yeah.
When you want to get marketing out the door, you got to manage the person, you got to manage the task, right? And them to clean up all the data. What you guys have done with the land portal is you have the ability to check a button and say, nope, I don't want landlocked, right? I don't want more than this much flood zone or wetland, this percentage. I don't want this much slope. So you're scrubbing on the front end. So when we pull the list, we're essentially ready to market.
Yeah, it's just cleaning your list. It does a lot of your scrubbing for you. And that was like step one. And even like that vacant lots AI button that we have at the top there.
Yeah.
That is looking at it from multiple different views and databases, seeing, hey, is there a structure on this? It looks at a lot of different things, and it's very, very accurate. That was the first thing we built on the land portal, because we were doing a lot of work in Alabama and Kentucky. And I'm telling you, these counties would show you, like we would be searching on data tree back in the day from improvement value, building square feet, land use, all of that. We'd get 30+% would have a house or some sort of structure on it. And that was why I was like, I got to get rid of this one problem first. And that was the first thing we built. But yeah, ideally, I like we were just building an industry building a tool that we wanted to use to help benefit ourselves at first.
Yeah, this solves our own problem, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then let's get it to pay for itself at least, right? If we're going to incur all these development costs, right? If we're going to build a theme park, we don't want to do it just for us. We better get some other riders and sell some tickets to pay for it. Yeah, I know you guys have done a great job, man. You guys have done a really good job with that, and you're continuing to add to it. Why don't you kind of like explain to everybody what Land Portal is, because there's a lot to it. Like I'll just kind of share from my perspective. It's not just a data product. We can pull our marketing lists, right? But we can also skip trace those lists inside of Land Portal, not exporting and uploading a list somewhere else. And then when the leads come back, we can almost use it like a map right or a regrid, where we can turn on mapping layers, right? Like the the flood zone 3D. So it's kind of like a maybe not all in one, but it definitely handles what might be like 3 or 4 different softwares. I feel like you guys have baked into one product.
Yeah, we the map and data are probably the number one use case, but like the map was one of the first things we built out, because just keeping your map on where you're getting your data essentially, and having that was really beneficial, and just keeping it all in one, looking at your saved list on a map, visualizing things. You get a property back, analyzing it on a map. So you're able to analyze and pull your data from there. That's kind of essentially what we built at first. And then along with that, we built in all those AI tools and all the different filters to get really refined lists. So in a nutshell, the land portal is just a place to get your property records really refined to the land investing space. So very specific to this industry, which really there's not a lot of softwares like that. And then when you get those leads back and you get that data, you can analyze it, do your due diligence, do a lot of that. And the way we're headed, where we're headed, like we are close to becoming the Zillow of land, essentially. Like there's going to be quick MLS filters. You can see it on a map, see all the listings, see what's for sale, sold, and that data is directly integrated with our data as well. It's not like some overlay. We actually have nationwide data too for the MLS integrated into each one of our data points now, and that's being released here soon as well.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's a massive. I mean, that's not just like a feature ad. That's like a milestone, right, within the product. That's huge.
Yeah. I want to be able to literally pull up the land portal, and that's been my vision the whole time. Pull it up and analyze comps, analyze different properties on it, and really be able to see the market from a nutshell from looking at all the listings, MLS listings, active and sold on a map.
Well, and then the other thing I think that people like a consideration is understanding the cost per record, right? That's where I think also that you guys have a competitive edge is that and I don't want to like timestamp things or commit you guys because pricing changes, right? Like pricing plans change, data, your costs will change. What I would say right now is you guys might be half or a third even on like your highest plan, right? Of a cost per record. I feel like you guys have really right-sized plans for anybody that if somebody's just starting out, if they're intermediate or they're advanced and pulling 20,000 records a month, you guys got a plan that's a good fit. And at each one, it's a fair price per record.
Yeah, and you got to realize too, that price per record's post scrub. So you're scrubbing these before pooling too, and a lot of people don't factor that in.
Yeah.
And the highest plan, you get a bulk set of exports essentially a month. So you get 20,000 at the highest plan, and that's more for advanced professionals, whatever you want to call them. But even when you're on one of the lower plans, you got to look at it like, okay, yes, it's this per record, but how many records am I saving?
Yes.
From doing it? Like, because we did a list on YouTube Live the other day, Travis, and we pulled up, I think, 2,000 records. Then we excluded wetlands, landlocked, all of this. And then our list went to 1,100. And it's like, that's 900 pieces that I didn't have to pull somewhere else.
Yeah. And while share with people that it's that cost per record of data you didn't need, but then also if you were scrubbing like I was, where you're paying a VA to go through your list and look them up on a map and scrub them out, you have that cost per record. And now you also have that labor. And for us, that usually was somewhere around like 5 to 8 cents a record or a row to have a VA go through and hit every row. So, and then that turnaround time. So yeah, you're right. Doing that on the front end, and you don't have all this extra data for properties that you're just going to end up with all these bad leads, right? And that's the hard thing, I think, Daniel, to quantify, right? Is the property comes back that's landlocked, you or your team or whoever's looking it up, the time is spent, like researching the property now only to identify it is landlocked.
Out live, all of that. Yeah. No, exactly. It takes so much time. It's energy too. Like you only have so much energy. It's just, it's crazy to see people posting I just hear a lot of different students and land investor stories, and just people aren't having the same issues that we had when we were doing it years ago anymore. Like they're not getting all these crap land back. You don't just send out all this mail knowing you're only going to have a certain percentage go to land you actually want. Like things have just changed tremendously.
Well, and that's where I think when people start out, they go, well, I hear about the good old days when it wasn't as competitive. Like, am I too late or should I not? And I go, oh my gosh, yeah, there might be more people doing it, but there's all these incredible tools now, like what you guys have created and so many others that didn't exist, that weren't purpose built for land investors. If they were, some of the tools that are out there are more like B2B type products or commercial products. But to get like a software membership at a low price point, a single user license to pull this type of land data and have access to this is incredible. If you know how to, when I started, we were like using the county GIS and like buffering to pull a CSV file, you know what I mean? From a county, it was just, we were mail merging, these CSV files with a Word document. So now when people like go, am I too late? I'm like, are you kidding me? There's all these great tools now that make it so much more efficient.
Yeah. I mean, with competition comes innovation essentially. So more people come into it over time because they see the same thing you and I see, but at the same time, a lot of different good innovations to help you save time, money, and be more effective essentially come into play.
Well, we talked about some of the basics. Kind of let's touch on some of the advanced stuff because like you said, you have some filters, some features in there within the land portal. One that jumped out to me because I'm a miner. I mean, I love minor land divisions, subdivides, right? Where generally it's usually 4 or 5, splitting one parcel up into 4 or 5 or less. But a key to like a property being a good subdivide candidate is usually how much road frontage we have. And you guys have a tool where I can say I want a minimum of X feet of road frontage on a property. So if I'm pulling a subdivide list, like that's how, rather than just say, yeah, I want a bunch of, anything over 40 acres or whatever, anything over 10 acres, that could be a long, skinny parcel. Like we know, you know what I mean? And it's a large acreage, but it's not subdividable. So that road frontage feature that you guys have is fantastic for subdividers.
Yeah, it's probably, I guess that and the landlocked filter.
Yeah.
Are probably the two biggest, and they'll also make probably the two biggest amount of differences in your data set in terms of like the amount of record, depending on where you are, the amount of records you actually get back and can save on those. But yeah, we just see like people always ask what's the rule of thumb for how much road frontage per acre you want for subdivides. And I always say like, 50 feet an acre or so. If you have 10 acres, go for 500 feet minimum of road frontage, or 400, something around there. Because we used to target subdivides with our salesmen. And I remember we'd have to, like you said, have a VA go through and just look at, does this have road frontage? And is it just a little slither of road frontage or a lot? Like you put it into two type of buckets, right? It has good road frontage or it doesn't. And it's all from the eye test essentially. And now we have a tool where we can target that. And that made subdividers' jobs much, much easier.
Yeah, because the more road frontage you have the ability to size properties differently. You don't have to do like these long, skinny child parcels, right? Because there's only one road access on one boundary or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, and for those kind of like listen to the podcast, go, hey man, this sounds interesting. You guys did a mastermind where you guys came on the mastermind and you guys fielded lots of questions. Got knee deep in the weeds of like, features, feature requests, where the product's at right now, what's coming. If anybody wants to check out the show notes, the episode webpage, you can access that mastermind replay, right? So people can actually watch. And that's kind of like a little more of like a look under the hood and a deep dive into what we're just kind of do an overview today on the podcast, but the mastermind replay is definitely worth checking out for people that are, intrigued. And Landportal sounds like something that might be a good fit.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to see more of in the weeds and behind the scenes and what's going on internally, that's the place to go. Yeah,
because you guys got a lot coming. That's not just overlaying comps, but building comps into the data. That's going to be huge.
Yeah, because overlaying really, like when I look at it, it's not as effective for what I want to get out of it, right? Yeah. I want it to be in every single property so I can use my filters with these filters now. So I could put, something that's sold, I can filter by something sold in the last 5 years or something for sale actively. And it's been for sale for over 180 days. So I know maybe I have a better chance of acquiring it. And then it's integrated in all of our other filters, like you said. So you can use the road frontage on it. You can use the landlocked. You can use wetlands, FEMA. And I just wanted to be able to use it together with my powerful data instead of just having them as two separate overlay databases.
Yeah.
That didn't do what I wanted. And no one else does this. And I knew there's a gap, and it was the hardest thing we've ever had to do on the software by far.
Really?
And it's getting ready to be released, but I think it's the most powerful thing as well.
Yeah, as somebody who used to make feature requests and then launching a software ourselves, I realized that like it's easy as a user to identify, hey, why don't you add a drop down here? Why don't you, it's easy to upvote a feature request or even be the first one to make the feature request.
Yeah.
But on the back end, on the development side,
right? More to it, yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, but that's where people like you, because we do take feature requests very, very seriously, because we grew this. For me, it was easy to grow because I went to myself and I said, what do I want? And I went to our users. I said, what do you guys want? And you see, 20 people said the same thing. They want this requested. Yeah. Oh, Travis said this. He wants this requested. These people also said that. And you see the commonalities of what people want.
You see the one off the exception where you go, okay, no, we're not going to spend, 100 man hours building this out for the one person that wanted that. Exactly. But you start to hear the same things twice. Exactly. And then also, I think in different regions, right? Like there's different needs. You know what I mean?
Very true. That's where it gets complicated.
Southwest, the Southeast, that's where I know you guys have like slope reports, right? That told me right away, like, okay, the markets you're probably in or have done a lot of, like slope's important, and you didn't want to end up with all these leads on properties where, the slope is too extreme to build.
Exactly. I mean, that was one of the hardest things. We didn't touch on the slope report, but there's an AI generated slope report in our database on the land portal. So if you are in those sloped areas, which a lot of the United States is sloped if you look at a map, especially Southeast, Northeast, kind of the Midwest has a lot of slope, not all the Midwest, but like Ohio is sloped, parts of India, Kentucky. But we wanted to find a way to get a better idea of what's actually going on in the land besides just looking at contour lines, because contour lines are pretty spread out and you don't really know what's going on in between them. And you can hit 3D map and stuff, but you still don't know. So for our slope data, we have every 1 by 1 meter square slope data in the whole country. So we can put the parcels together and analyze the slope using AI and saying how sloped is the land, how much flat area is it, even will circle a buildable area that it thinks is buildable through an AI that we built out over the last 6 months.
Yeah, I used it the other day on a deal we were underwriting for a funding company. I think it was like 3D and contours. I could see, yeah, this is mainly a sloped property, right? But it came back as like 92%, of it on your slope report. So we're looking at, it's like a 5-acre property. So, we've got a lot of size, square footage to work with, but at the same time, like that's how much of the property, right, had like extreme slope. And then we just had this little pocket, and it became a situation where we're like, hey, we'll pass on this. It's not buildable. It's just like, hey, you probably need to renegotiate the purchase price based on buildable acreage. And you're not buying a 5-acre property when we're talking with the seller. We're going, okay, there's not much. There's a home site here, but there's not much buildable. It doesn't make sense for you to offer based on 5 acres when most of that is slope, right? So I think that slope report is a good internal tool, but also I think, honestly, that's like something that could be shared when you're negotiating or you're talking to the property owner, where you're like, hey, because we offer a lot of the times like based on buildable acreage, like net acreage. So I'll subtract out wetlands, I'll subtract that out. And that allows me, to essentially justify my lower than market offer if I'm kind of working with net acreage. Well, hey, let's kind of shift gears. Let's get out of, we kind of highlighted the land portal. I would encourage people like get on the land portal train. This is a fantastic product at a really fair price per record, and it consolidates a number of different softwares where you're bouncing around and jumping into Regrid, into MapRight, into probably like Direct Skip, all these different products, whatever data product you're using, you guys kind of have it all in one spot and a great price point. But I kind of want to spend the last of the podcast talking more like entrepreneurial, right? About we covered in the beginning, kind of you moving from e-com and getting into this, and you mentioned your brother. But why don't you share with everybody, kind of talk about this, because we got a number of Apke brothers and we got a number of businesses here. Why don't you tell us on the personal side about kind of the different businesses that you guys own and how your brothers are involved in those?
So Ron and I have been in business. The first business we were ever in, it's not really a business, but we started buying real estate rentals. That's how we got started in real estate in general together. So Ron and I did that. He even right out of college, he loaned me a little money so we could buy.
Now, is he older? Rental. Is Ron older than you?
Yeah, he's 2.5 years older. Yeah.
Okay.
So he loaned me a little money and we went in, and I was making $45,000 a year, but I was living in Ohio and I could save a little bit for a little small down payment for a commercial salon that we bought. And that was like the first intro to real estate that I ever had. And since then, Ron and I continued to work with each other in different areas. So we started, investing in land together. That was Ron and I. And then we also started the education together and the software together. Our brother Mike came into it as well. I've been in e-commerce businesses with Mike, our third brother, Mike, and he's the oldest, right? He was looking to buy a business and he was looking for a while, and we were going back and forth. And then I think Ron told him, he's like, why don't you look into droners? They're not accepting our jobs anymore. Something's going on with them.
That's interesting, being on the other side, having been a user or a client, because with our funding company, we drone everything, right? Every property. So we were on that side of like, hey, our droners were basically our jobs. They wouldn't release footage because the droners were like, hey, we're not getting paid. Right. So we're like, what's going on with this company? So I'm excited to hear from your perspective, obviously.
Yeah. That was an interesting.
You saw this as an opportunity. So
well, I didn't really know what's going on. So they were owned by Precision Hawk, a company called Precision Hawk, which was owned by a company based out in Sweden or something. And their American entity, which was an umbrella of companies essentially, was filing for bankruptcy. So I might not have all the details exactly correct, but they were filing for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And Droners.io was a part of that entity filing. So everything needed to be liquidated in Chapter 7. But we didn't find that out. We couldn't get a hold of anyone. Mike was messaging people on LinkedIn, trying to figure out, hey, what's going on with this? He was talking to ex-employees, the CEO of the company that owns it. And eventually they told him, hey, this is Chapter 7 bankruptcy. You have to go to the trustee and talk to the trustee if you want to buy it. That's the person in charge of, the attorney in charge of getting the most money out of it in court, right?
Yeah.
So we got some information. We finally contacted them. We got some information on it. And they said, there's going to be a live auction on this date in court. You got to go to Raleigh, North Carolina and go to federal court to auction, to a live auction, essentially. Yeah. And there was one bidder on the company at the time. So there's one bid. You don't know how much they're bidding on. They won't tell you that, but there's just one bidder. If there's two bids, then it goes to in-person auction. So like a couple days before the deadline of putting in a bid, we submitted ours to get it to go to auction that next week, essentially. So I'm talking to my brothers and stuff. So we put in like a minimum bid to get it to go to auction. And it was scary because you have no idea what the other person is. If they have big money, little money, if there's some big company coming in, if it's a little guy, you just have no idea what kind of money you're looking at. So we're like, let's go to Raleigh and let's try to buy this thing, right? So me, Ron, and Mike all fly to Raleigh that next week and meet up in a hotel and wake up. And we still don't really know what's going on. We're like, we know we have to go to an auction, but we don't really know like what this entails, what number. We go to First Watch. We're like, okay, how high do we want to go in this? Like, how much money do we really want to spend? We're trying to get like rough estimates to know our top number of what we're going to bid. And we went in to court. You got to go through the scanners, give them your ID. This is federal court.
Yeah.
And so we pretty much go in. And there's one other company there that's bidding against us. We're doing it in the hallway of federal court. He's like, I'm more casual. Let's just do it out here.
Yeah.
I was like, that's fine with us. And they put in their bid and then it just worked into the auction. I'm not going to go into numbers or anything, but pretty much it got to a certain point where their attorney representing them had to make a couple of phone calls to see if they can go higher. Yeah. And that's when we kind of knew we were going to win, was we just saw them hesitating to go higher. And then that next time they came in, he got approval to go higher, I guess. So they came in, put in their bid above ours. And then we put the dagger in and we shot up like 30-40% just so he had authorization not to go back and make that call again. And then we ended up going in federal court as the winner, and the judge, handed us the company and did all the paperwork and stuff like that.
All right. So this is a company that is not just land. People were talking land, right? And droning land, but this is a well-known national company that flies drones for all sorts, residential, commercial, right?
Industrial is the biggest space. Industrial warehousing is the biggest industry that it's in because people buy industrial. A lot of companies will buy industrial assets all over the country. They don't have local droners in the office, and they're also big 5 million, 10 million, square foot places, 1 million square foot place, and they get professional droners on there. That's the number one industry that we're in. But all real estate, all events, venues, weddings, things like that. Droners.io, it covers a lot of different industries.
So how cool. So as a dad of, 4 boys, right? I'm looking ahead, and excited. And I think that would be awesome if there's a chance that my boys could work together in some capacity. How cool is it you guys must be pretty close if you're all you're either in the same business or overlapping or in adjacent businesses. What's that like working with your brothers?
I think it's fun. We have a business mentor who was down here last week with us, and we were doing some visioning for the next 12, 24 months, getting things together. And he's like, what your advantage is that you guys can kind of, you talk exactly how you feel to each other. Yeah. If you don't agree on something, he's like, you go in corporate companies and people are so hesitant to step on each other's toes. It's like, I don't care what I'm going to say if it's going to hurt his feelings. And he does the same thing here. So although it sounds like we're bickering back and forth, we're actually kind of getting somewhere. And he said that was a big advantage. But we all get along. We're super close. We talk every day. Ron and I talk every single hour just about with business and everything. We're on the same mission all together, all 3 of us, and we're just trying to grow and scale these companies.
Well, and I think that's Ray Dalio has a great book, Principles, and he talks about that, like within a company having to have radical candor and radical transparency, right? And that's what I think, having served my time in the corporate world, that's what's lost, in those meetings. You're always dancing around each other's feelings and trying to handle some people's kid gloves, right? But as when it's family, right, you just say what you think. So you're essentially, that is your competitive edge. I also like though that you mentioned when you were in ecom, you had mentors, and now you're talking about you have business mentors, right? Because I know, having coaching people, a lot of people that haven't had coaching or mentors their first go around can really view it with as a cost mentality. Is this worth it? But I hear you mention mentors a couple times. So obviously for you guys early on in other businesses and even where you're at right now, you have mentors.
Yeah, you gotta, I'm always going to. Yeah. I don't even want to show you my bills for all the coaching and different things that I spend. It's not, it's a lot of money, but it's worth it. And I have mentors for different things. I have a business coach mentor who's he's in a spot where I want to be in 5 years. The guy's crazy successful. He owns a lot of big businesses. He has a great lifestyle. He's close with his family. I just look at people who I'm like, that's where I need to be. I like the way his style. I like where his businesses are. And you, I don't want to say use them, but you get mentorship with them and find different things that work. And you end up becoming great friends with him. He's a lifetime friend now. I also have a life coach to help me on the more personal side that I pay a couple $1,000 a month too. Everything I always do, I'm looking for, I don't want to recreate the wheel for everything I do. I can take different industry leaders, kind of batch them together and learn a lot from other people. I don't think going into it thinking you're better than everyone and don't need mentorship, even though because you hit a certain level, you're not going to grow. Like you can, but it's going to be much harder.
Yeah, that's just it. It's identifying those people who are already at where you want to be, right? So that you can accelerate. You can get there. You can actually usually beat them. You can get faster to where they are than they did because they're giving you all the cheat codes and the fast lane, the secrets. So no, I like that. I'm with you. I can't tell you how many times, and there's a lot of big names for us where I've cut a check and it's like, even if it's one day, like I paid 25 grand just to spend a day with, I can think of 3 different big name people, right? Yeah. That's what it took to get FaceTime and be there for a full day. But I feel like for me, honestly, like one of the biggest takeaways was like, I'm impressed with their business, but there was nothing that made me feel like I can't do this. You know what I mean? There was nothing like this celebrity, they kind of have that halo effect of somebody that's running a huge, big, successful business and they're well known. But then when you get there and spend several hours together, at the end of it all, you're like, okay, they're not that much different than me, and aptitude wise, like I could do this, right? Definitely. So if anything, that's one of my bigger takeaways was, but having that person to check in with, that accountability, that's huge, man. Well, hey, congrats on all the success, and you guys got a lot more growth, a lot more coming. Look forward to building a strong partnership, 100%, and helping each other grow, man.
Absolutely. And if you guys are interested in the land portal, Travis has a unique link with a special offer on it. So make sure to always use his link if you got that. But I appreciate you bringing me on, Travis.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll throw up a QR code. If anybody checks out mylandportal.com, you'll be able to get access using my link, and you guys can join for free and play with it, right? Even if you want, you don't have to pay day one. You can get in there and take it for a spin. Exactly. Yeah. All right. Hey, Daniel, appreciate you, man. Thanks for the time. I'm excited about what's ahead with you guys.
Appreciate it, brother. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Thanks for tuning into The King Show. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Also, don't forget to head over to travisking.com for show notes, resources, bonus content, and more ways to connect with me and the guests that you hear on the show. Remember, greatness is already within you. It's time for you to boss up and claim it. Stop building someone else's empire and start building your own.